3 months before the wedding, I signed the check. It was a quiet Tuesday, the kind where the rain never really comes, just hangs in the air like a thought. I'd been in the kitchen sorting through my bills when Lindsay called, not to chat, not to ask how I was, but to say, "Hey Mum, the florist wants half up front, and Dad's been kind of slow getting back to her." I said, "Of course, because that's what I do." The next day, I mailed the check, $2,300 for peonies and wild eucalyptus, because Lindsay wanted it to feel like a fairy tale, but real. I remembered when she was little, how she used to pick dandelions and call them magic. That part of her never left. So I helped where I could. It wasn't just the flowers. 2 weeks later, I chipped in for the cake deposit, then the chair covers. Then I forwarded her a photo of my old pearl earrings, offering them as her something old. She never replied, but I assumed she was busy. I didn't ask for credit. I never do. When the wedding invitation came, it wasn't addressed. It was a group text. "Can't wait to see everyone on the big day. Ceremonies at 4, reception to follow. Let us know if you're coming." 12 names. No mum. No call beforehand. My chest stung. Not because of the casualness, but because I hadn't yet been told the date I'd been paying into something I wasn't formally invited to. Still, I tapped, "Yes, I'll be there," and hit send. 2 minutes later, Carla, the stepmother, replied with, "Can't wait, sweet girl. I'm honored." A few people added hearts. I closed the chat. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed, still in my housecoat, staring at the closet. I pulled out 3 dresses. One I'd worn to Lindsay's high school graduation, one to her college convocation, one I'd bought 3 years ago, never worn. The unworn one was navy, draped just right, the kind that said dignity without asking for attention. I laid it over the chair and smoothed the sleeves with my hands. Then I picked up my checkbook from the dresser, flipped to the last stub. My handwriting, shaky but clear, said, $1,250 to Lindsay for venue deposit. I'd sent that one in May. I never got a thank you, just a receipt, forwarded through Carla's email. It hadn't always been this way. There was a time when Lindsay and I were the kind of mother and daughter people wrote articles about. Matching sweaters at Christmas, handwritten lunch notes in elementary school, late-night phone calls from dorm rooms when breakups felt like the end of the world. But after the divorce, things shifted. Her father remarried quickly. Carla was everything I wasn't. Slim, polished, endlessly social. She made centerpieces out of wine bottles and mason jars. She called herself a bonus mom. At first, I tolerated her. Then I watched as she quietly filled the spaces I had once occupied. First birthdays, then graduations, then the bridal shower. I wasn't invited to that either. I saw the photos on Facebook. Carla sitting next to Lindsay holding the ribbon bouquet from the gifts. My daughter's eyes looked happy. My name wasn't in any of the captions. Still, I told myself, this is what love does. It doesn't compete. It stays. It shows up. The next week, I went shopping for shoes. The girl in the store was young, maybe Emma's age. She asked if it was for a special occasion. I smiled politely and said, "My daughter's wedding." She beamed. "Oh, mother of the bride? We have a section just for that." I wanted to correct her, to say I wasn't sure if I was that anymore, but instead, I let her lead me. I picked a pair of black, low-heeled pumps. They felt right, strong, practical, the kind of shoe a woman wears when she needs to carry herself through something quietly. The day before the wedding, I baked. Not because anyone asked me to, no one had, but because I always do. I made Lindsay's favorite, hazelnut lace cookies, thin, golden, crisp. I'd wrapped them carefully in wax paper and tied the box with satin ribbon. I thought I'd leave them in her bridal suite, just a quiet reminder that I remembered, that I still knew what she loved. I placed the box next to my purse, right on top of the envelope. Inside was a personal check, $5,000, marked, "For your new beginning. Love, Mum." I'd planned to hand it to her privately after the ceremony, something to surprise her, to support her. I didn't yet know I'd walk out of that wedding with it still in my purse. The rehearsal was held in an old stone church, with tall archways and worn pews, the kind of place that echoed with every step and swallowed small voices whole. I arrived 15 minutes early, as I always do, wearing my navy dress and a simple gold pin on my lapel. I'd brought the cookies with me, wrapped neatly and tied with a fresh ribbon. The envelope with the check was still tucked into my clutch. When I stepped into the foyer, the air smelled like dust and lilies. There was a woman at the guest book table, clipboard in hand, phone on speaker. She glanced up and said, "Are you with the bride's family or the groom's?" I blinked. "I'm her mother." She hesitated. "Oh, right. Sorry, just making sure everyone's on the list. We've got Carla listed under mother of the bride and didn't want to double count." I smiled, tight and small, like someone trying not to drop something delicate. "No problem," I said, though every syllable tasted like metal. Inside the sanctuary, they were already running through the lineup. Lindsay stood at the front in a floral sundress, her hair pinned up loosely. Her father, Neil, stood beside her, puffing his chest like he was still trying to impress everyone. Carla hovered near the bridesmaids, fixing someone's strap, laughing like she belonged there. I took a seat in the third pew, alone. When Lindsay spotted me, she waved quickly, then turned back to the planner without missing a beat. Carla handed her a water bottle and smoothed a piece of lint off her shoulder. The photographer walked in a few minutes later, holding a clipboard and barking out requests. "Bride and groom with parents?" I rose from the pew. So did Carla. The photographer looked between us, unsure, until Lindsay called, "Mum, can you take one with just us first? Carla's already got the bouquet thing down." "Just us." I paused, then sat back down. They took the photo. I watched from the edge of the aisle, framed by shadows and stained glass. The camera clicked again. Carla's hand rested proudly on Lindsay's arm. I felt like a stranger attending a life I once helped build. Afterward, in the reception hall across the street, small tables had been set up for drinks and finger food. Cheese cubes, crackers, fruit slices stabbed with tiny swords. I placed the cookie box on the side table neatly beside the other dessert donations. Carla noticed, picked it up, peeked inside. "These from you?" she asked. "Yes." She smiled like someone receiving a participation trophy. "How thoughtful," she said, then turned to Neil. "You remember these from Lindsay's high school graduation? Irene made them then, too." He gave a distant nod. "Oh, right, the almond things. Hazelnut." I didn't correct him. As the evening wound down, I walked toward Lindsay. She stood surrounded by her bridesmaids, giggling, holding a mock bouquet made from ribbons and bows. Her cheeks were flushed. She looked younger than she had in years, glowing in a way I hadn't seen since before Carla came into the picture. "Sweetheart," I said softly, touching her elbow. She turned halfway. "Yeah, Mum. I just wanted to say, tomorrow's going to be beautiful. I'm so proud of you." She smiled, briefly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks," she said. "And thanks for helping out with everything. I know it wasn't cheap." "I'm glad to," I said. "That's what mums do, right?" She laughed gently, then looked over my shoulder. "Oh, Carla said she's bringing the emergency kit tomorrow. You know, the one with bobby pins and safety pins and stuff. She's honestly been a lifesaver." I nodded. "I'm sure." She turned back to her friends. I stood there a moment longer, then stepped away. On my way out, I saw Carla again, arranging dessert trays like she was running the event herself. Her blazer was crisp white, and her earrings glinted under the pendant lights. A younger woman came up to her and said, "Lindsay's so lucky to have you. You're like the definition of modern motherhood." Carla tilted her head modestly. "Oh, I just fill in where I can. I always say blood doesn't make a family. Showing up does." I kept walking before I said something I couldn't take back. Outside, the night air was thick with spring. Crickets hummed near the grass line, and someone across the street was watering a hedge. I unlocked my car door and sat behind the wheel, my hands still wrapped around the steering wheel even after I turned the ignition. The bouquet thing, the emergency kit, the seat at the rehearsal dinner, the just us photos. It wasn't one moment, it was all of them, tiny cuts, over years, and I had let each one pass. Because I loved her, because I believed I would always, eventually, be remembered. But the funny thing about being quietly dependable is that people forget you were ever there at all. That night, at home, I ironed my navy dress again, carefully smoothing the neckline, pressing the hem. I laid out my shoes. I packed the checkbook into my purse. Then I walked to the hall mirror, stood in front of it, and tried to see myself the way they might. And I realized they didn't. They hadn't in years. But tomorrow, I would still show up. I'd sit where they told me. I'd clap at the right moments. I'd hand Lindsay the envelope. Or so I thought. I arrived at the venue 30 minutes early, not because I was nervous, but because it's what I've always done. Show up early. Help things run smooth. Stay out of the way. The wedding was set in a renovated greenhouse glass walls, hanging ferns, vines crawling like script across the ceiling. The chairs were gold with white sashes, arranged in two perfect halves. White rose petals had been scattered down the aisle. Soft music played some acoustic cover of a song I didn't recognize. An usher in a fitted black suit glanced at my envelope and smiled politely. Name? Irene, mother of the bride. He skimmed the list on his clipboard, frowning slightly. Then he pointed. Row 9, left side. I blinked. 9? He nodded. That's where you're listed. I followed the direction he gave, my heels tapping across the stone. The scent of eucalyptus and lilies drifted heavy in the air. As I passed the rows, I saw them Carla and Neil seated in the front row. Carla wore champagne silk. Her hair was pinned in a French twist. She had Lindsay's bouquet in her lap. She looked like she belonged. Neil waved casually. Carla didn't turn. I reached my seat, row 9, far left, and felt the chill of stone before I even sat down. There, towering beside my chair, was a thick white column decorative, I'm sure, wrapped in ivy and white gauze, aesthetically lovely, structurally devastating. Because once I sat, I realized I couldn't see the altar, not the arch, not the vows, not Lindsay, just a half view of Neil's shoulder and Carla's earrings glittering like glass. I didn't cry. I adjusted the hem of my dress, sat straight, and folded my hands in my lap. A woman behind me tapped my shoulder. Excuse me, she whispered. Could you lean a little? I'm trying to get a picture. I turned. Of course, I said. I tilted sideways, straining my neck. My eyes fell on Lindsay standing at the far end of the aisle with her bouquet. She looked stunning. She looked happy. She didn't glance my way. As the processional began, guests rose to their feet. The music changed. A murmur passed through the crowd. Someone behind me whispered, "Here she comes." I stood with everyone else, but my line of sight was still blocked. All I could see was the edges, Carla dabbing at her eyes, Neil straightening his back, the bridesmaids fidgeting with their bouquets. The pillar remained firm, unyielding, like a boundary between me and everything I'd given my life to. I tried to lean again. I couldn't. There was no room. Then I heard it. "Are you a family friend?" Someone beside me asked, too casually. I turned my head. "Excuse me?" "The bride's side is pretty full. I wasn't sure where you fit in." I didn't answer. I simply looked down and felt the envelope in my purse beneath my palm, thick with years and forgiveness, sealed with hope. The check was still inside. So were the lace cookies, in a plastic bag tucked under my seat. No one would miss them. No one even knew I had brought them. The officiant cleared his throat. The music lowered. Vows began. And I sat back down. I placed my purse in my lap. Then I picked it up. Then I stood. I didn't fumble. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I just left. One step, then another, each one lighter. I passed row 7, row 4, then the aisle. No one turned. No one noticed. Carla leaned over to whisper something into Neil's ear. He chuckled. They laughed while I walked. And still, Lindsay never looked back. Outside, the air was warmer than I expected. The sky was pale blue, soft around the edges. The sound of vows was muffled through the glass walls behind me, like a memory being retold underwater. I stepped off the path and kept walking. Not to the parking lot, just forward. A few blocks down, tucked between a flower shop and a boarded-up bookstore, was a tiny cafe. A chalkboard sign out front said, "Cinnamon scones and strong tea, just what the heart needs." I pushed the door open. A bell above jingled. The girl at the counter looked up and smiled. "Hi there. Rough day?" I nodded. "Something like that." "Take your time. Sit wherever." I chose a seat near the window. My purse sat beside me, my coat draped over the back of the chair. She brought the tea in a blue ceramic mug. No lid, no handle, just warmth. Then came a slice of apple crumble. "On the house," she said. "You look like someone who deserves pie." I smiled faintly. I opened my purse, pulled out the envelope, looked at my daughter's name. Then I tore it. Once. Then again. I left the pieces on the table. Outside, the sun had started to dip. A breeze stirred through the street. A child across the road skipped in rain boots. A man watered a pot of red geraniums. And I sat there in that little cafe, alone, unseen, and absolutely, unquestionably present. For the first time that day, I wasn't invisible. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like waiting to be seen. I stayed at the cafe until the sky softened into that sleepy blue that only comes after late spring weddings, warm light fading, not with drama, but with grace. I watched the streets breathe. I watched couples walk hand in hand. I watched a boy chase a dog that wasn't on a leash, his laughter echoing across the sidewalk like a reminder that joy exists somewhere, even if it's not yours that day. My tea grew cold. The apple crumble was gone, the plate wiped clean except for 2 flecks of cinnamon. The girl behind the counter smiled at me when I stood to leave, but she didn't ask anything. Bless her for that. I stepped outside and walked. No direction, no plan. Just the slow rhythm of shoes on pavement and a body learning to carry itself lighter. I didn't go home. There was a small inn near the edge of the city, nothing fancy. White shutters chipped around the corners, with a sign that read, "Orchard Street, Guest House Vacancy." I checked in under my own name. The clerk, a young man with a nose ring and tired eyes, asked, "Business or personal?" "Personal," I said, "and overdue." Room 202 smelled like lemon cleaner and old linens. The bedspread was floral. The lamp flickered when I turned it on. But the silence? That was clean. That was earned. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the cookie bag from my purse, the hazelnut lace cookies I'd made just in case someone remembered what I was good at. I took one. Just one. It crumbled gently between my teeth, delicate and bittersweet. For the first time in decades, I ate something I'd baked without waiting for someone else's approval. Then I opened my phone. 6 missed calls from Neil. 2 texts from Lindsay. "Hey, where did you go?" "Mum, are you okay? We're about to do the toast." No apology. No, "I'm sorry you were behind a pillar." Just concern that I might cause a scene by not being there to fill my role. I locked the screen. I didn't answer. Later that night, I took out my notebook, the one I kept tucked into my bag between grocery lists and emergency contacts. I opened to a fresh page and wrote at the top, "Things I've paid for without being asked," and I began listing them. College application fees. First semester tuition at State A used car when hers broke down senior year rent when she moved in with her fiancé. The dress deposit, the florist, the cake, the bridal suite gift basket I paid for. But Carla delivered. The list went on. I paused halfway down the page when my hand began to cramp. The writing was crooked but clear. I stared at the ink and realized something. None of it was bitterness. Not yet. It was recognition that I had shown up in ways no one ever noticed, that I had supported silently, consistently, that love doesn't require recognition, but absence does clarify things. I flipped to a new page. At the top, I wrote, "What they remember," and below it, Carla's gift basket, Carla's emergency kit, Carla's toast, Carla holding the bouquet, Carla in the front row, Carla in the photos. Not me. Not the woman who bought the dress. Not the woman who taught her how to plait her hair, clean a wound, say no to boys who didn't bring kindness with their flowers. Carla, the woman who married into the second half of her life. I went to sleep with the lamp on, the notebook still open beside me, the bag of cookies folded shut, one left. When I woke up, it was just after 6 a.m., my body still moved to old rhythms. I brewed the single cup of hotel coffee and drank it black. The morning light stretched over the dresser like ribbon. I didn't feel victorious, but I did feel intact. At 7:23 a.m., a new message arrived. This one from Lindsay. "I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to you more yesterday. It was all so overwhelming. Carla said you left during the ceremony. I hope everything's okay." That was it. No ownership. No question about why I left. No reflection about where she had placed me literally and metaphorically. I didn't respond. But I whispered into the quiet, "I raised you to do better than this." And then, after a long moment, "But I forgot to show you how." Later that morning, I packed my things and checked out. The clerk didn't ask how my stay was. I appreciated the neutrality. It gave me space to be myself. Instead of heading home, I turned toward the city center. I walked 3 blocks until I reached the red brick building with green awnings, Fairview Legal Financial, my lawyer's office. A bell above the door chimed when I entered. The receptionist recognized me and smiled. "Mrs. Camden, Mr. Keating has time at noon if you'd like to wait." "I would," I said. "I have updates to make." While I waited, I sat in the lobby and reopened my notebook. I added one more list, what I won't pay for anymore. Their silence, their approval, their curated photos, their versions of my story, their expectations of what a mother should quietly endure. By the time Mr. Keating called me in, I had 2 new pages of clarity. He gestured to the chair across from him. "What can I help you with?" I smiled gently. "I'd like to update my estate," I said, "and remove my daughter from the will." He paused, didn't blink, just nodded. "Of course," he said. "Let's begin." Mr. Keating had been my lawyer for over 20 years. He helped finalize my divorce, drafted my original will, even talked me through pension transfers after I retired from the district library. He had kind eyes and fingers that tapped softly when he was thinking, as though drumming away anything too harsh. "This is a significant change," he said after I told him I wanted Lindsay removed as my beneficiary. I nodded once. "It's overdue." He studied me for a moment, not like he was doubting, but like he was searching for anger. He wouldn't find it. I wasn't angry. Just done. He opened my existing file and read aloud the current allocations. My house, the investment accounts, 2 certificates of deposit I'd quietly nurtured for over a decade, a small annuity, a modest life insurance policy, and a note I'd once written, attached in bubbly cursive, for my daughter, who has always been the best part of my life. I asked him to remove the note. "Would you like to designate a new primary beneficiary?" he asked. I was ready for that. "Yes," I said. "Emma Hall." He looked up. "Emma?" "My niece. Technically, she's my ex-husband's niece, but she's always called me Aunt Marilyn." He typed. "How old is she?" 32, works in Vermont, occupational therapist. Still sends me birthday cards." He smiled slightly. "Add a note," I said. "Not legal, just personal." Something she'll find later. He nodded. I watched him draft the new documents, the cursor blinking like a steady heartbeat. The page filled with my name, my choices, my signature authority. Power, quiet power. The kind that comes when you stop waiting for anyone else to give you permission. While he printed, I pulled the last hazelnut lace cookie from my bag and set it on a napkin. A small comfort. He slid the forms to me, a pen beside them. "Are you sure?" he asked, soft but clear. "Yes," I said, signing my name. "I'm just sorry it took me so long to be." When I stepped out of the office, the sun had risen high, not soft like yesterday, but direct. It hit my skin like a question. What now? I didn't have an answer, but I knew I'd never sit behind a pillar again. That afternoon I returned home. The moment I stepped into the house, I smelled lavender and old pine, the scent of a space kept quietly in order. I took off my shoes at the door, placed my bag on the entry table, and stood in my kitchen for a long time, doing nothing but being there. The same kitchen where Lindsay used to colour with crayons on the floor while I made soup. The same sink where I washed her hair after long summer days. The fridge still had her art magnet on the side, faded, but still clinging. I peeled it off gently, tucked it in a drawer. Then I sat down with my checkbook. The ledger still had Lindsay's name on too many lines. I flipped through the pages and began circling each one that started with her initials. There were 47 entries. 47. Silent yeses. I got to the bottom corner of the last page where I'd scribbled a note to myself months ago. Final payment before the wedding. Save receipt. I drew a line through it. That evening I lit a candle. Not for mourning, not for ceremony, but for clarity. I brewed a cup of strong tea, pulled out the photo album I hadn't opened in years, and began to sort through the images like chapters of a book I'd only recently started reading for myself. In the middle of the album was a picture of Lindsay at age 6, wearing my old veil from storage and holding a dandelion. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the album and stood. The phone rang. Not once, but twice. Greg, then Neil, then finally Lindsay. "Hey, Mum, can we talk? I didn't like how things ended." I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because she hadn't noticed the ending until she realized I was no longer playing the part. Later that night, I walked out to the porch. The sky was darkening into navy, the same shade as the dress I'd worn to the wedding. A cat crossed the street, slow and careful. The neighborhood was still. It felt like the world was holding its breath for me to speak. Instead, I did something better. I opened my laptop, created a new document, and typed, "To Emma. If you're reading this, it means I trusted you enough to hold not just my things, but my truth." I didn't write more that night, but I knew what came next. Before I went to sleep, I stood in front of the mirror again. Same reflection, same face. But something had shifted. I wasn't rehearsing anymore. 3 days passed before I heard from Emma. Not a phone call, not a text. A letter, handwritten, blue ink, curled at the edges from travel. It arrived in a small white envelope, addressed in the same looping script she'd used as a teenager when she wrote me thank you notes for summer trips or birthday cards with pressed flowers inside. "Aunt Marilyn, I just wanted you to know I heard about the wedding. Not from Lindsay, she hasn't spoken to me in months, but from my mum. She said you weren't seated with the family. She said you left early. She said Carla gave a toast. I don't know what happened, but I do know you. And if no one else has said it, I'm sorry. I've always thought of you as the one who held everyone together, quietly, like thread. No one noticed until the seams split. I love you, and I see you, always. Emma." I pressed the letter to my chest and stood in my kitchen, blinking hard. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel forgotten. The next day, the phone rang. Again. Lindsay. This time, I picked up. "Mum?" Her voice was light, cautious. The tone you use when you're testing the depth of the water before jumping in. Yes, I said. You answered, she said, half surprised, half relieved. I did. A pause. Then a breath. I don't really know where to start. I didn't help her. I waited. Eventually, she filled the silence. I heard from Dad that you changed your will. I let that sit. She added, he said Emma's getting everything now. I didn't say that, I replied, but I suppose that's what he thinks. Silence again. Why? She asked. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't wounded. It was baffled, as if she had truly, deeply, never considered the answer before. I closed my eyes, then opened them, and spoke. Because I watched you give my seat away. Mum, I didn't assign the seating. You didn't stop it. I didn't know. You didn't look for me. She didn't speak. So I kept going. You let her hold your bouquet. You let her give a toast. You let her be in the photos where I should have been. You didn't check where I was sitting. You didn't ask if I could see. You didn't introduce me to your in-laws. You didn't say my name during the speeches. I was overwhelmed. You weren't blind. Her breath caught. And for once, I didn't soften. I have spent 30 years showing up, I said, quietly, with checkbooks, with cookies, with sleeves rolled up, with rides, with advice, with unconditional love. And in return, I was put behind a pillar, like a misplaced decoration. Mom, she whispered, you're making this about money. No, I said calmly, I'm making this about value, about presence, about what it costs to be invisible for decades, and what it means to finally stop paying for the privilege. Another pause. Then she said, I didn't mean to hurt you. I believe that, I replied, but intent doesn't erase impact. She sniffled. I could hear her trying not to cry, but I didn't comfort her, not this time. Because this wasn't about soothing over wounds anymore. This was about naming them. So is this it? She asked. You're just done with me? No, I said. I'm done waiting to be chosen. If you want to show up, not perform, not pose, but show up, then I'll be here. But not behind pillars, not in back rows, not in silence. There was a long pause, longer than any yet. Do you still love me? She asked. I never stopped, I said. But I also finally love myself enough to stop proving it over and over to people who forget I'm in the room. She didn't hang up. She didn't respond. She just stayed quiet, which told me she'd heard me. That, finally, something had landed. I didn't offer her a way back in. Not yet. That's not how this works. When someone forgets your name in your own story, you don't just rewrite them in out of nostalgia. You let them earn the next chapter. That night, I sat on the porch again. The candle burned slowly in a jar beside me. My hands folded in my lap, not clutching, not waiting, just resting. I replayed the call, not to second-guess it, but to memorize my own clarity. How many women lose decades to unspoken things? How many keep saying yes just to avoid being erased? How many sit behind pillars, smiling, while their hearts split open like ribbon? Not me, not anymore. And in that moment, I knew. The next chapter of my life wouldn't be written in invisible ink. It would be seen. Emma arrived the following Saturday. The morning was bright, but cool, the kind of early summer day where the sun stretches wide, but the wind still bites. I stood on the porch in my softest cardigan, a navy one with worn elbows, waiting as the train hissed to a halt at the little platform downtown. She had texted 5 minutes earlier. Just past Maple Street. One more stop. I didn't bring flowers. I didn't bring fanfare. Just a paper bag with 2 turkey sandwiches, a thermos of tea, and an apple wrapped in a napkin in case she hadn't eaten. The train doors opened, and there she was. Emma wore jeans, a loose flannel shirt, and her hair in a bun that looked like it had been put up while running for the train. Her face was flushed. Her canvas bag was slung over one shoulder. And when she saw me, She lit up like childhood had just come home. "Aunt Marilyn!" She grinned, rushing forward. We hugged full tight, no performance, just arms that had missed each other and knew how to say it without words. "I can't believe it's been so long," she whispered. "It's been long enough," I said, holding her for just a beat more. We drove slowly back to the house. Emma looked out the window like she was memorizing every tree, every crack in the sidewalk, every bakery that still smelled like cinnamon and promise. "I used to think this town was too quiet," she said. "And now?" She smiled. "Now it feels like sanity." At home, she dropped her bag in the guest room, the same room she used to sleep in as a little girl, back when she'd leave me notes under the pillow. "Thank you for my grilled cheese. Love you more than stars." I'd kept those notes, tucked away in the drawer with my scarves. We had tea in the living room. The fireplace was unlit, but the scent of lemon oil from the wood still lingered. The chessboard was already set up. "I see you haven't lost your touch," she smirked. "Only at bishop openings," I teased. "I'll still beat you by mid-game." We played. She won the first round. Barely. Then we played again. I won. Later we sat in the kitchen sipping fresh tea. The red poinsettia from winter had long since withered, but I'd replaced it with a pot of small sunflowers. Emma reached out and turned one of the blooms toward her. "I read your note again," she said softly. My throat tightened. "You did?" She nodded. "On the train. I keep it folded in my planner." I didn't speak. I let the silence mean what it needed to. Then she said, "It didn't sound like a goodbye. It sounded like a declaration." "It was," I said. "Of what?" "Of finally choosing myself." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I see you," she said. "You know that, right?" I nodded. "But more importantly," I whispered, "I see me now, too." We made dinner together, simple pasta with garlic and spinach. She grated cheese while I stirred the pot. We talked about work, her favorite patient, a stubborn little boy who refuses to admit he likes Play-Doh, and her landlord. He plays saxophone at 2 a.m. like he's in a jazz club he is not. We laughed until the sauce boiled over. It felt like old love, not love built on obligation, but choice. After dinner, we watched an old movie. Something black and white and slow. The kind you only appreciate when you've lived long enough to crave pacing. Halfway through, Emma turned to me. "Dad called me yesterday." I paused the movie. "What did he say?" "That I shouldn't get too involved in whatever you're going through." I sighed. That sounds like him. "I told him," she said, "that maybe if he had paid attention you wouldn't have had to go through it alone." I blinked. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You deserve better. You always have." We sat like that for a while. No more words, just the crackle of the TV and the sound of soft breathing. I hadn't felt this safe in a decade. "Before bed," she said, "Grandma used to call you the steel magnolia." "She did," I laughed. "Said I was sweet until I needed to hold the roof up." Emma smiled. "Well, you're holding the whole damn house now." "Good," I said, kissing her forehead, "because I finally stopped asking someone else to build it for me." She went to bed. I stayed up. Sat in the living room, listening to the soft tick of the wall clock, the fridge humming in the distance, the wind outside like an exhale. This was the chapter I never expected. Not triumph, not revenge, just being seen. I looked at the photo on the mantel, the one of Lindsay as a child, holding a seashell up to her ear on a beach I can't remember the name of. Her face was full of curiosity then. I whispered to it, "Come back when you remember who I am." Then I turned off the lamp and let the darkness settle. The day after Emma left, the house felt still. Not empty, not lonely, just still, like the moment after a song ends and before the applause begins. I made tea. I moved through each room slowly, picking up the mugs we'd left half finished, folding the throw blanket she curled into, setting the chessboard aside. Her laughter still echoed in the walls, soft and bright, like a breeze that hadn't quite left. And then I opened the drawer, the one under the fridge, the one labelled legal, a flimsy sticker that had held on for nearly 15 years. Inside were folders, thick ones, labelled in my handwriting. Greg.Emma.Lindsay. I started with Greg. Tuition documents, car repair invoices, a co-signed lease agreement from 2009 for a studio apartment he abandoned when he followed a girl to California. He left me to deal with the lease buyout. I'd paid it. Never asked him for the money back. Then came the loan forgiveness forms. He'd defaulted once. I covered it so his credit wouldn't collapse before his mortgage did. There was a scribbled note from Malene. "We'll pay you back after the holidays." They didn't. I closed the Greg folder. No bitterness. Just data. Next came Lindsay. I expected it to be thinner. It wasn't. Wedding invoices. Photographer deposit receipts. A handwritten list titled Venue Estimate with her notes in the margin. Ask Mum if she can help with 2 or 4K. Underneath, a scan of her freshman tuition bill. I'd paid the first semester in full. No ceremony. No ask. Just quiet relief when the deadline passed without her panicking. There was even a printout of a floral arrangement she once sent me. No card attached, that I only later learned was ordered by Carla. I had thanked the wrong person. Twice. Then Emma. Her folder was slim. Not because she'd asked for less, but because she took less. 2 birthday cards. A Christmas thank you note. A photocopy of her college graduation announcement honors listed in bold. A postcard from Vermont with one line. "Wish you were here. Fall is wild and wonderful." A note tucked into the side said, "Thank you for helping me with my course fee last spring. I passed. I owe that to you. Not someday I'll pay you back. Not remind me later. Just gratitude, undiluted, unperformed." I stacked the folders. Greg's thick and impersonal. Lindsay's heavy and unreciprocated. Emma's light and truthful. And I understood finally what had happened. I hadn't been cut out of my daughter's life. I had been bled dry quietly over decades of time, of support, of identity, until there was nothing left for me to stand on. And when I needed to be seen, I was placed behind a pillar. Out of sight. Out of frame. I pulled out a yellow legal pad from the drawer. At the top, I wrote, 15 years of gifts, support, and silent sacrifices. And I began to list them. Line by line. College textbooks. Emergency dental visit. Bridal shower deposits, Carla's car rental for the wedding week, booked under my name, Ruby's art camp. Paid when things were tight. 3 different missed thank you calls. At the bottom I wrote, never missed a payment, rarely received a thank you. Then I started a new page. Things I no longer owe. Explanations. Second chances to people who waste first ones. Silence during disrespect, apologies for asking to be seen. A seat at a table that pretends I'm not there. I folded the page, taped it to the inside of the cabinet under the sink, the place where I keep the dish gloves and the extra sponges. A strange place for strength, but real. At 3:17 p.m., my phone rang. Greg. I didn't answer. A minute later, voicemail, then a text. "Hi, Mom. Just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Let me know when you're free to talk." No urgency, no specificity. Just a vague nudge, as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't sat behind a pillar while his wife gave a toast. As if I hadn't been wiping cake from my kitchen counters while they posted family portraits I wasn't invited into. I deleted the voicemail. I left the text unread. And then I walked outside and clipped 3 sunflowers from the pot on my porch. I placed them in a chipped vase near the sink. The room looked brighter. That evening, I made soup. Lentils, carrots, a little turmeric. The kind that smells like care. I set a place for one, lit a candle, ate in peace. And halfway through the bowl, I whispered aloud, not for drama, not for vengeance, but because it needed to be said. I was never spare. The knock came late Friday afternoon. 3 short raps. Hesitant, but sharp. Not the mailman, not a neighbor. The kind of knock that knows it doesn't belong, but hopes to be let in anyway. I stood at the kitchen table, folding a warm towel from the dryer. My hands didn't freeze. I didn't rush. I finished the fold, set it in the basket, and walked to the door. When I opened it, there she was, Malene. Her hair was swept back too tightly. Her makeup was clean but overly precise, the kind that smudges the moment emotion breaks through. She wore heels too narrow for our sidewalks and carried a tote bag slung stiffly over one shoulder. She gave a half smile. "Irene," she said, "can we talk?" I didn't move at first, just studied her. She looked polished, composed, but something beneath the surface vibrated the flicker of someone who hadn't expected to knock, and certainly hadn't expected me to answer without fear. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. We walked to the living room. She didn't sit until I did. She placed her bag carefully at her feet and folded her hands in her lap like she was about to apologize at a job interview, not enter the home of the woman she helped erase. She looked around the room. Same floral curtains, same wooden clock. But something in the air had shifted, and she felt it. She cleared her throat. "I know you're upset," she began, "and I just want to say, this whole thing, it's been a huge misunderstanding." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't assign the seating," she said. "That was the planner." "Planner knew your name," I said. "Didn't know mine." Malene blinked. She wasn't ready for that. She tried again. "Greg thought your flight was Friday. That's what he told me. We didn't realize you'd already landed." "And the photo?" I asked. Her posture tensed. "What photo?" "The family photo. The caption. Full house, full hearts. You were holding my daughter's hand." She looked down. For a second. "That was just something I posted for the holiday," she said. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." "But you did." Her head lifted too fast. Reflex. "Well, yes, but I think we need to move past that now. The kids miss you. Greg's been calling. We're all just concerned." "Concerned I stopped filling the silence for you," I said. Malene stiffened. "I came because we want to make things right." I studied her face, the practiced sadness, the strained sincerity, the tightness in her voice, not born of guilt, but fear. "You didn't come to make things right," I said quietly. "You came to see if I was still useful." Her mouth twitched. "That's not fair." "But it's true." She looked toward the hallway as if Greg might appear and rescue her. I let her sit in it. "I've given enough," I said, "and I've decided where the rest of it goes." Her expression changed, not anger, but calculation. Her voice cooled. "Does Greg know you've made changes?" "I imagine he's starting to suspect." "And the house? Your accounts?" "Taken care of." The silence that followed was thick, not awkward, but final. Malene reached slowly for her tote. Stood. "Well," she said, tone clipped, "I'm sorry you feel this way." I smiled, just a little. "No," I said. "You're sorry I stopped accepting less than I deserve." She didn't reply. She turned toward the door. At the threshold, she hesitated. "Greg really is worried," she said, voice soft. "He should be," I replied. "Not because I'm gone, but because I'm not coming back." The door closed with a soft click. I stood there for a long moment, my hand still on the knob. The air vibrated with what hadn't been said. Then I went back to the kitchen, finished folding the towels, lit a candle, and poured myself a glass of wine, one of the good bottles I'd been saving. I sat, alone, but steady. Later the phone rang. Greg. I didn't answer, not because I was angry, but because the silence finally belonged to me. 3 days passed after Malene's visit. Greg didn't show up. Lindsay didn't call again. The silence was their answer. And for once, I didn't dread it. I wore it like a coat I'd finally chosen, not because it was warm, but because it was mine. I spent those days tidying, not cleaning out of habit, but editing. I cleared my desk of old receipts, shredded duplicate insurance statements, took photos of things I planned to sell the china set. Lindsay insisted she'd want someday, but never picked up. The antique mirror Greg always called too depressing. I moved through each drawer like a surgeon removing what no longer served the body of my life. And then, in the back of the linen closet, I found the letter, a draft, yellowed, folded 4 times. Dear Lindsay, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I didn't read the rest, because I wasn't gone. And that letter wasn't true anymore. That evening I sat down and began a new one. Not for her, for me. To the woman I've been for the last 40 years, the mother, the helper, the fixer, the peacekeeper. Thank you. You did your best, even when they stopped seeing you, even when they took you for granted, even when your kindness was mistaken for compliance. You were strong, you were present, you were honest. But now it's time to live without asking if you've earned it. Now it's time to stop paying to be seen. Now it's time to build the rest of your life, not in reaction to theirs, but as a reflection of your own worth. I folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, wrote only one word on the outside, keep. Then I tucked it in my nightstand, beside a fresh notebook and a pen that glided when it wrote. The next day I met with Mr. Keating again. Final signatures. He slid the documents across the table with quiet ceremony. Emma's trustee, he confirmed. Full discretion. Instructions to distribute your personal effects as noted. House, accounts, pension. All done? I asked. He smiled. It's your life. You've chosen where it goes. I nodded, then paused. One more thing, I said. He looked up. Include a note on the house deed transfer. He raised an eyebrow. I dictated. This home was once filled with sacrifice. Now it's gifted in freedom. May it never again hold anyone who isn't seen. He smiled again. A quiet one. I'll include it, he said. On my way home, I stopped by the florist. Picked up a small bouquet of white tulips. Simple, unassuming. Just like the joy I now preferred. I dropped them off at Emma's mailbox with a small card. Thank you for remembering who I am, even when others forgot. Aunt Marilyn. No signature needed. She'd know. Back home, I made a pot of lentil soup again, same as before. But this time, I added lemon. Because everything was different now. That night, just as I was settling with a book, my phone buzzed. Lindsay. I let it ring. Not out of cruelty, not to punish, but because I needed her to feel it, the echo of all the times she'd missed the moment to choose me. A few minutes later, a text. Mum, I saw the posts. I saw Maline's face when she came back. I know what she said. I just want to talk. I didn't know how far this had gone. I didn't mean for it to go like this. I'm sorry. I really am. I read it. Twice. Then placed the phone face down and returned to my book. Because this wasn't about apology anymore. This was about pattern. That night, I slept without dreams. Not because I was empty, but because peace has no script. A month later, I received an invitation. Cream cardstock, silver embossed lettering, Ruby's recital, a dance showcase for the local youth center, tiny girls in sparkly shoes, beaming under stage lights. Lindsay's daughter was performing. My granddaughter. I hadn't seen her since the wedding. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. We'd love for you to come, Mum. I know things are tender, but Ruby asked if you'd be there. She misses you. I miss you too. No expectations. Just a seat with your name on it. Lindsay. It was short, uneven, unsure. But it was something. I sat with it for 2 days, let it breathe. Then I pulled out my wardrobe box, the one with the nice clothes I kept for special things. I chose a soft teal blouse, cream slacks, a simple silver necklace, no pearls, no loud earrings, just me, polished but calm. And I went. The recital was in the high school auditorium. I arrived early, not for a front row seat, but because I didn't want to be hidden again. I found my seat easily. There was a white folded card on it. Marilyn reserved. No last name, no grandma, no title, just me. Scene. The lights dimmed. The music began. Ruby was third in line. She wore a sky blue tutu, her hair curled tight, her eyes scanning the crowd. When she saw me, her face lit up. She waved, wildly, and missed a beat in her steps. The little girl beside her nudged her gently back into rhythm. I smiled, and waved back. It was real. It was hers, and mine. Afterward, Lindsay approached, slowly, like someone walking toward a mirror they weren't ready to look into. She wore jeans and a soft sweater. Her makeup was light. Her eyes were red, maybe from pride, maybe from regret. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "I almost didn't," I replied. She nodded. "I deserved that. I didn't say it for you." Another pause. Then, "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "Thank you for reserving a seat." She looked down. "I don't know how to fix everything." "You don't," I said. "You begin again, if you want to." "I do." "Then begin." She didn't cry. She didn't beg. And I didn't rescue her from discomfort. Because it was hers to carry now. Ruby ran over. She hugged my legs. "You came." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. She smiled. "Mom said you might not. But I told her. She will. She's not like everyone else." And then she was gone again, twirling backstage. I turned to leave. Lindsay stood still. I didn't say goodbye, not yet, because this was still her audition. That night, I returned home. I made a single slice of toast, set the table for one, lit a candle. Same ritual, but this time the room felt different, not full, but open. On my nightstand sat the letter, the one I wrote to myself. Beside it, a new notepad. I pulled it out, wrote only one line. The seat I reserve next will be one I choose. Weeks later, I got a call from Emma, Aunt Marilyn. "I'm thinking of moving back to New England, maybe nearby. You'd like that?" "I'd like you." I smiled, because it wasn't duty. It wasn't guilt. It was choice. We made plans, not set in stone, but real enough. The kind of plans women make when they've stopped pretending time is infinite and started treating it as precious. One morning I walked into town and bought a plant of fiddle-leaf fig. Young, sturdy, high maintenance, but worth the effort. I placed it by the window, gave it sunlight, watered it, named it Grace. And in the evenings, I wrote. Not memoirs, not letters, just thoughts. What I know now, what I once allowed, what I never will again. I didn't tell the world my story, but I lived it differently now. And maybe someday Ruby will ask. Maybe someday Lindsay will understand. But even if they don't, I've taken my seat, and it has a clear view. I don't have a scrapbook of revenge. I didn't scream. I didn't slam doors. I didn't beg to be noticed. I just stood up, quietly, and walked away with my dignity and my checkbook. Maybe one day they'll understand that the greatest thing they lost wasn't money. It was me. My laughter at the dinner table. My quiet planning behind every celebration. The warmth I gave without asking for credit. You don't get that back with flowers. Or fragile apologies wrapped in guilt. You earn that back with effort, with patience, with change. But I don't wait anymore. I don't sit by phones or doors or memories, hoping someone remembers how much I gave. I've moved inward. Built a peace that doesn't beg to be kept. I've stopped rehearsing who I used to be and started living who I've become. And if the world never says my name again, that's okay, because I say it. I am the woman they sat behind a pillar, and I am the one who stood, smiled, and walked out into a life of my own making.